I have to be honest and say I've been here 25 years and I've never had any serious negative issues with anybody here.
This is Jeremy. Born in London, he studied in China in the 80s and moved there a decade later. After our first chat, he became a social media sensation in China, gaining millions of views. So I'm back for part 2, strolling through Guangzhou and visiting the Happy Monk, a well-known bar chain he owns. Jeremy shared how Chinese people really see foreigners, how expats navigate the Great Firewall, and the biggest changes in China over the last 20 years. I'm Chernov, your insider to Expat Life. What
are the biggest changes in this place and in China overall do you see through these years?
I guess the biggest change is economic. Let's wind back 30, 40 years. You imagine a society where most people were dressed in blue and grey, kind of Mao suits.
Yeah.
And send you photos of that.
Yeah.
Where there was virtually no private business.
No private business.
It was just beginning.
Yeah.
And the beginning of private business were the peasants from the countryside who could bring their produce and sell it on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And these guys got rich first in China. There was a name for them. The thing that always strikes me is the speed and scale of all of this. It wasn't like a slow, measured, it was just...
Yeah.
Over 30 years is a short period of time.
Yeah.
And if you look at, I'll send you photos of old Guangzhou and modern Guangzhou. Zhejiang Newtown, the CBD, was fields when I first got here this time. Literally, villages and fields. And now it's a very modern CBD. And that's happened so quickly. I think that's probably the most impressive thing about all of this is the speed and scale. This has happened on such a big scale.
Yeah.
When I moved here in 1998, Hong Kong, little Hong Kong there, was almost quarter of the Chinese GDP.
Oh, really?
Now I think it's maybe 2.5%.
Yeah, of course.
So if we look at it in that context,
yeah.
When I first came here, France, Germany, the UK were significantly bigger economies. Now China's kind of snapping at the heels of the US economy, right?
Does it actually bother you, how you call it, Great Firewall? Yeah, Great Firewall.
Yeah, it does bother me.
It does bother me.
It's really annoying. It's not very efficient, whether for work or personal connections, and a lot of people overseas don't have WeChat. Yeah. So it's not ideal for being able to connect with people. It also means you're somewhat cut off, so you do feel cut off from the outside. So yeah, it's not ideal, to be honest. This is one of the challenges for foreigners living in China. Back in the 80s, mainland China was just really kind of opening the door.
Yeah.
And people were coming in and looking around, and a few businesses were setting up, but it was a very different world. Hong Kong in the 80s was, a bit like Manhattan. It's very international. It was very high rise, and thousands of people from everywhere. And yeah, it was sort of very British in one way in terms of the system, and there's a lot of familiarity, but also very, very Chinese. So Hong Kong did and has really preserved its Chinese identity and its Chinese culture. In many ways, Hong Kong's the most Chinese city, interestingly. So I always say it's a Chinese city with Western characteristics. Yeah. And that was really the system and everything, for historical reasons, right? But still more traditional. It's kept a lot of the Chinese customs going, and it's an interesting place, yeah. I liked it so much in the 70s, I came back in the 80s to learn the language.
I read the story when you were there as a student. It's fascinating. Like Shanghai, by 9 p.m. was completely dark.
Completely dark.
Wow.
A few street lights.
Yeah.
Nothing was open. I mean, apart from a few hotels where foreigners stayed. And bear in mind, local people weren't even allowed into these hotels. There was someone at the door checking. If you look Chinese, they'd check your ID. So for local people, they weren't allowed in. Foreigners could stay only at these designated hotels.
Yeah.
But by 9, 10 o'clock at night, Shanghai was pretty dead. There was a few little things going on here or there, but not much. Obviously, totally different from today.
Yeah. What was your the best memories, the most vivid memories from that time, being a student in Shanghai?
Being a student in Shanghai felt like it was on the verge, poised to happen.
Already?
By the 80s, yes, because you could see a lot of interest in China in terms of business. Companies were starting to look here. China was opening up year by year.
Yeah.
So you could really sense that. You felt you're at the cusp of something big that was going to happen, for sure. In terms of day-to-day, the memories are, you know, the sort of old world, old Shanghai feeling. I love the architecture. Some of it's still left, a lot of it's gone. But, you know, you go down the back streets of Shanghai and you see these, you know, European-style houses and old houses here, and it was all a little bit crumbling and oldie-worldy.
Yeah.
And cycling around Shanghai in the sea of bicycles as a 19, 20-year-old with your international friends, that was amazing. Getting to junctions where there's so many bikes, you could get separated from your friends. They were on a bicycle, you were, and you'd be trying to get together, and then the whole tide. It's like a sea of bicycles.
Yeah.
So
no cars, yeah? No taxis?
Very few cars. So when I arrived in Shanghai, the figure that was mentioned is there were less than 20 private cars. There were official cars and state-owned trucks and buses and public transport.
Yeah.
But in terms of private cars, there were essentially none. Few taxis, but even they were very few and hard to find and hard to get and hard to book.
Yeah.
It was, you know, phones didn't work very well. Yeah, like I said, it was just on that cusp of change, which was exciting. I loved it. In fact, at the end of the year, I wanted to stay a second year.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a rush to leave, and I really enjoyed the experience. Another thing in terms of memories, and this may sound a bit romantic and naive, but it felt very innocent. So it's sort of untouched by the big world. And I remember one time I lost my wallet on a bus, and the buses were packed. And, you know, I'd just withdrawn my monthly pocket money that my parents sent me.
Yeah.
And it was, I can't remember how much it was. It wasn't a lot of money in British terms of the day.
Yeah.
Cost of living wasn't high here, but by local standards, it was quite a lot of money in my wallet. And I left it on a bus, and I thought, okay, that's it, gone. And I remember the next morning in our reception at the Overseas Students building where I was living, somebody had brought my wallet.
Wow.
With everything still in it. And there was that kind of innocence that I remember. People were friendly. They still are, but people were very friendly and very curious about people from outside, and, you know, very few people had been overseas. So meeting people like us, and for some people they were learning English, and so there was a lot of interaction with local people on the streets.
Yeah.
So I remember that.
What do you actually feel like walking the streets right now? Do you feel like you belong here, or is like bringing a lot of like warm memories from your past?
Every time I come here, I do think back to the time as a student living in China.
Yeah.
Because we used to come to Guangzhou a lot, and we all stayed in this little hostel, which was just around the corner here. So this became kind of a stomping ground for us. Whenever I come here, that's the first kind of feeling and that familiarity. You know, when you experience things when you're little, you get that sense of familiarity back. Also, I love the old architecture, and it's a bit of history, and people chilled out. I love the trees. What do you feel about it when you see it, when you come here?
It's just gorgeous. I love the mix of like old European style buildings and the Chinese vibe and Chinese people around. I think it's nice.
Yes, it's pretty unique, right?
It's pretty unique, yeah.
I mean, if you go to Shanghai, of course, there are some of the old concession areas have amazing architecture.
Yeah.
And there's a few of these so-called treaty ports where you can find this type of thing, but here in Xiamen, it's pretty well preserved.
When I was in China filming this interview, I had a helper who translated everything, guided me, and even helped me pay with my phone, just like locals do. The helper was an eSIM. Honestly, it's a must for any trip. So let me introduce Holofly. It's an international eSIM card available for 200 plus destinations. My favorite thing about Holofly is that almost all of these destinations offer unlimited internet access. And if you're traveling without a region like Europe or Asia, you can get regional plan and use single eSIM for your entire trip. The same goes for the global plan, which covers 113 destinations. All you need is one eSIM. I used to buy local SIM cards, but they took too much time and weren't worth the hassle, especially for a short trip. That's why eSIMs make traveling so much easier, and you should definitely try one on your next trip. So click the link in description below to use my discount code maxchernovYT to get 5% off your next order with Holofly. And voila! Enjoy your trip to the fullest!
So how people did react to you, especially when they hear you speak Chinese?
Well, my Chinese was pretty bad then, but I tried.
Yeah.
I remember the first time, second day in Shanghai, I was out on my bicycle and I got lost. And I remember summoning up the courage to ask, 火车站在哪? Where's the railway station? And they didn't understand me, and I probably got all my tones wrong and everything. So first thing I said in China in public to a random stranger. I remember that. That was a distinct memory. But most people really were very friendly, very curious. Lots of questions. People stared at you a lot. I mean, in Shanghai, we weren't so unusual as foreign nationals. There were people, but once you got out of Shanghai, then most people had never seen anyone like us before. So that caused a bit of a commotion.
Yeah, it's pre-internet, but still television. So they only saw like the Caucasian face on TV. Probably.
Yeah, and even then there wasn't much on the TV. And there were a couple of movies, that American film Love Story. You're like, that one. That was in the cinemas. One of the first Western films to be publicly shown in China. So I remember seeing that with Chinese friends back in 1986. And that's another memory. I guess just the streets of Shanghai and the food and traveling around and getting on the buses. And, we used to travel. I spent a lot of time traveling around China then. By all means, planes, buses, boats, hitchhiking, trucks, side of the road, cycling. And it was great.
Are there any tensions Chinese with British at all because of the history? Or because it was not really colonized, the China like other countries? There's nothing left, of this.
From this era, if we're going to generalize, deep in the national psyche is a very strong sense of past injustices. There was the Opium Wars, for example, which led to the ceding of Hong Kong to the United Kingdom in the first half of the 19th century. And this period of what they call humiliation and unequal treatment and violence features very strongly in the national identity. And understanding that is important because the strong sense across China is that China was a leading world power in terms of economy, technology, and so on. And then China became no longer a world power. And now is the time that China regains its rightful position as a leading global power. And they call this the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is the official term. And that comes right from the top. So when understanding anything about even modern politics, what's important to China, unification, economic development, prosperity, and so on, it's really important to understand it through that lens. And through the lens of history. If you've been grown up being told you're, let's put it directly, disorganized, backward, and a bit of a joke globally, and that was often the reputation, now's the chance to actually show the world this is who we are. We've had a culture and a civilization that's been around for so long, and now we want to regain our rightful place on the stage.
Where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, and that kind of underpins so much that we see today in terms of what's going on a internal, external, international level. And when looking at what is happening here, understanding that context is really important. And I think as Westerners living here, it's hard, without getting into rights and wrongs, but it's sometimes hard it's easy to underestimate how strong that sense is.
What's the real attitude of Chinese towards foreigners? I mean, there are a lot of different opinions. I see some negative comments, some positive comments. Some say Chinese are super open. Some say nah, they never treat you as equal. But what do you think? How they actually treat foreigners?
Look, I have to be honest and say I've been here 25 years and I've never had any serious negative issues with anybody here. Most people here are respectful, friendly, helpful. Some are quite aloof. They don't really communicate much. But I've never felt threatened or anything like that on account of myself being a foreigner. That being said, what I mentioned a few minutes ago, the end of the day, you're still, to some degree, going to be an outsider. Whether you're treated well or not is a different point. And yes, lots of people here are very friendly and curious about where you're from and curious about the world and interested to exchange ideas and to connect. And so on a social level, on making friends, meeting people, Chinese people are, I'm going to generalize, pretty open and friendly. And I always think at the end of the day, the way people in China live, the way people in Western countries live, is not actually that different. Fundamentally, it's not that different. We get up, we go and work in offices or do our jobs, we earn money, we spend, we invest, we do. It's not a clash of lifestyles. I have to be honest, Max, and say I've, running a bar restaurant business, never had any challenges like that. No one's ever punched me, right?
Yeah.
If I was running a bar in parts of England, you'd probably get beaten up now and again. Hasn't happened here. Nobody's ever threatened me.
Yeah.
After all these years, and I'm grateful for that.
It's interesting because you mentioned the UK. I used to live in Ireland, in Dublin, and like Irish, one of the friendliest people on earth. Love them, but also the culture of like being aggressive, especially when you drink.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a tradition, like a national tradition.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it's very different with Chinese. So they kind of stay friendly. I'm generalizing, of course.
Yeah.
But they're like not as much confrontational compared to the Western
Westerners.
world.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. I mean, this goes into many levels of discussion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a starting point, East Asian society, Japan, Korea, China, and so on, quite Confucian. So they're quite hierarchical, where authority means a lot. Peace, what's the word? Harmony. All these very strong values are very much reinforced through the education, through parenting, through school. This is through the system of government. This is very much this sort of stability and harmony and peaceful coexistence is really important. Don't stick your head out too high. Don't be disruptive. Don't be too individualistic. That's why, if you're going to generalize massively, and if you compare to, say, the UK where I'm from, I think discipline in schools here will be much better on average. In the UK there are schools where teachers are scared to go in. I've not heard of that here. It may happen, but I've not heard of it. You don't see vandalism here. You can walk around the streets in Guangzhou any time, day or night. Same in Singapore. You don't think about it. Whether you're male, female, you never ever think about personal safety. So definitely there's a big difference. I think in the West, people are more individualistic, more assertive about their rights, about individual freedoms to express themselves. I'm not judging there's no right or wrong, it's just different.
Yeah.
Having said that, in China, if it kicks off, if there is a inflammatory situation, it can kick off and it can spread quite quickly. So an example, if two cars have an accident, it can turn into a big fight very quickly, and other people can join in. If a fight breaks out in a nightclub, it can spark like this, and it gets nasty very quickly. So
it's like the inner tension that they're like.
You're right. In a way, there's this day-to-day, not veneer, because that means it's a bit superficial, but definitely this sort of day-to-day order to everything, which applies most of the time. But if that breaks, boy, it can get pretty ugly pretty quickly. One reason I think a lot of people in the West don't understand is sort of social control, political control, government control in China is pretty intense in many respects. But what they don't want is unrest, because it can be like a little spark which just grows very quickly.
Yeah.
So they're super sensitive to anything that potentially causes things to kick off. And that can happen, for sure. So I kind of get it.
On a big scale.
On a big scale.
On a huge scale.
It could. You look at history. So that's why, public events, crowd control, anything that involves lots of people doing something in one place, they're pretty strict on how they manage it and everything else. In the West, you still, cities like London, Paris, where there's terrorism threats, they still have these huge events, Olympics, people coming in from all over the world. People are very much pushed back against overly intrusive police tactics and everything else. So it's very different. It's really very different in that sense.
Hey, welcome from Singapore. And this interview with Jeremy, and I actually spent with him like 3 days. That was one of the most incredible experiences through my YouTube career, basically. We talked about life and business, and meaning of life and different stuff. And his ideas was like so inspirational. And I actually saw the new place, China, Guangzhou and Shenzhen, through the eyes of this incredible man. And you know, I was in the corporate world in 2014, then I left. I started my online businesses. I did quite a few things, from content creation to online marketing. And very often when I meet people across Asia, they ask me how I managed to do this lifestyle. And some of them say that's the best job in the world. And I actually agree. So I decided actually to unpack my experience and my knowledge from the last 10 years of doing like online projects, that through which I was able to travel the world, make quite some money through these activities. So I'll be launching a guide how to leave 9-to-5 job and how to create your online project to be able to travel, to work remotely, to make money like I do. So this guide is not ready yet, but if you want to get an access to it when it's launched, I will leave for a Google form. Just fill it up. There are just few questions, and then when the guide is ready, you'll be the first one will know how to get it. Link in description.
What's your main principles in life overall? I mean, that you developed through your life and through your business?
I do care about doing the right thing. I want to go to bed at night feeling that, you know, however badly I've done, I've at least, my starting point was always trying to do the right thing. So decisions in business, you have to make lots of tough decisions, but at least I always want to feel that I made the decisions for the right reasons, and those are good reasons. So they're ethical, they're honest, they're not criminal, they're not motivated by the wrong reasons. I'm not going to pretend that I get it all right. I'm human, I screw up like anyone else does. But I suppose that would be one really important thing. Learning. So I believe massively, be curious. My mind is constantly asking questions. That's why I'd love to do what you do. Seriously.
Yeah.
I'd love to do. I'd love to be a reporter. That's one thing I've always thought. Even now, I think I'd like to be a freelance reporter and just go and ask questions. I'm so fascinated. I always ask why. It's like National Geographic had a really good commercial on a TV, YouTube commercial many years ago. And it was just a series of things. And the question was, why does the sun come out every day? Because we need energy. Why do we need energy? So we can grow food. Why do we need to grow food? So there was this string of whys. And then it was, don't stop asking, National Geographic. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, and I don't know whether it's the education or whatever, lots of people you meet, you must see this when you interview lots of people, are a little bit like this. They're wearing these blinkers. They're not curious. I walk down, every day I walk to here from my home. I'm looking around. I can't help it. Why is that? What's happened? That building's changed. There's a new shop opening there. Why is that shop there? That's selling pots and pans. How are they going to be able to survive here? Who are their competitors? Don't stop learning, keep asking, keep questioning, try, and I do try, and by no means perfect, but try not to be too judgmental, try to take the opposite side, not to be argumentative, but to put yourself in someone else's shoes, because we're all biased as hell. It's part of being human, right? Confirmation bias. And so on. So I do try consciously to argue or to think about things from a way that kind of goes against my intuitive feeling, and to question and challenge myself. I think this is something really healthy and important to do. And it's actually quite liberating. You know, when you, especially with social media and all these news headlines and everything else, it's nice to do that. And I guess another one would be connected. It's also sharing. So I love doing this interview. Because it's sharing ideas, and hopefully you'll walk away having been inspired in some way.
100%.
Yeah. And that's not about me being arrogant. I want to inspire you because I'm so great. No, I don't feel like that at all. But if I can share something which moves the needle a bit in whatever way, that's great. That feeling's really, really good. And vice versa.
The philosophy of this channel is like, I want to show different ways of thinking, different paths of life of different people in different countries and different places. And I hope it opened up the horizon of people, how they think and how they make decisions, and possibly it will lead to some positive changes in their lives.
No, totally. 100%. And I think it will. I mean, inspiring people. Whether you agree with what I've said today or have a different opinion on it is completely cool, right? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if the needle's moved a bit, fantastic. You know, and when my needle moves a bit, I love that feeling.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right? When you learn stuff. And I'm a big, I even study. I've just finished a diploma. I finished an EMBA, which nearly killed me in 2019, which involved endless travel overseas.
Yeah.
I'm doing my Chinese exams. It was meant to be this year, but I'll postpone till next year because I've been so busy on other things. I constantly want to be learning, and formal learning as well as just life learning.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
What's the meaning of life for you?
Having a sense of purpose. So I think without a sense of purpose in life, whatever that purpose may be,
Yeah.
I guess I'm answering the question in an indirect way, but if you remove any sense of purpose from your life, then I think your life has no meaning. So then the question becomes, well, how do you see purpose and what is your purpose? And if you ask me to give you a sentence on what my purpose is, I don't think I could do it. I think what I could say is I feel passionate about at least some of the things I mentioned earlier. So sharing experience, mentoring. So I do mentoring of young people, school kids, university students, helping them understand what's ahead of them. It's one thing. So it's one thing when I was 18 or 20, I didn't have many people formally telling me or sharing with me much about the future. Of course, you have your parents and your teachers, but the conversations that I have with 20-year-olds today who are at university wanting to become lawyers or having no idea about what they want in their life, I wish someone had had those conversations with me back then. And I love those conversations, and I love helping people to kind of open the horizons a bit and work out a path that they want to take. It's not for me to tell people, become a lawyer, do this, do that, go to university, don't go to university. But I can certainly share experience and have you thought about X, and this is what happened when I did Y. And I realized that rushing to university and rushing into a degree and having to get the best results and the top university only takes you so far. You know, and that's by no means the only way to succeed. And what does succeed actually mean? And on my MBA, there were so many successful people who weren't particularly happy. Many of them were kind of trapped in these golden cufflinks. I work in an investment bank and I'm making a lot of money and I get lots of respect from everyone around me, but do I like it? No, I hate it. Is that success? Bit of a simple example, but I saw a lot of that on the program. So being confident in doing what you want to do, finding a purpose, a passion, a reason for doing things.
But have you found it for you?
Not religiously, not exclusively, but certainly in terms of mentoring, sharing knowledge, helping younger people to work out the path they want to take. This even in this business is quite a big motivation for me to carry on with this, to get out of bed in the morning and do this.
Yeah.
It's not just about selling drinks and food, right? It's about seeing, I'm going to simplify it a bit, but this business doesn't attract the best and brightest. It's catering, for goodness sakes, in China. This is seen as a job of last resort for many. I need a job to earn some money to buy some food and send some money to my parents who live in a village in wherever. That's how a lot of people start, on the shop floor, in the kitchen and so on. Over time, we've tried to create an environment where, it takes time. This is not a month, 6 months, but 2, 3, 4, 5 years. People start to slowly sense that actually this can be a career. And within my own constraints, I can learn a lot about a lot of things. That gives me huge satisfaction. And when those same people then have kids and they start sharing that approach or their new approach with their kids, taking their kids out to experience things that they probably would never have done before they worked here, that's a great feeling. And if there was anything close to purpose and passion and all these cliche words that people throw around, it would be something along these lines. But if you say, Jeremy, what's your meaning of life and what's your purpose and why are we here? And I can't give you a really clear answer on that. I'm not that organised and I don't plan things that much. But the direction, you get the direction. What I'm talking about. I think that probably would be where I'm heading and what I'd like to continue doing and do more and more. And like I said, I'd love to do the kind of stuff you do, interviewing, reporting, asking questions, getting to the bottom of problems, problem solving. I love that. A complicated situation, distilling it into something.
Yeah.
That's what lawyers do, right? I like that. Really enjoyed that about being a lawyer. Is taking all these factors, just bringing it together and then serving it up to a client so they go, shit, this makes sense. Thank you. This is really helpful. That feeling is wonderful.